Hello, my name is Chris Gates. I'm a retired member of the Oregon State Police Forensic Services Division, and I'm providing training on how to use the FDP, the Forensic Document Portal, to receive documents and to look through documents that the Forensic Services Division is sharing with the public regarding how we conduct our work. These documents may be accessed for any purpose, including discovery and public records requests. I'm going to share my screen to go through a slideshow, and it will probably take about an hour. If you have additional training questions when you are finished, there will be an email contact that you can reach out to me, or we have some additional training resources online. Here we go. All right, so starting with the goals of the Forensic Document Portal, the FDP, we would like to increase and streamline your public access to our division documents. These documents determine how our work is performed when we analyze evidence for the judicial system. We also hope to increase transparency about the revisions and modifications to those controlled documents over time. As we know, no document is good forever, and our methods have changed with technology and for other reasons such as our accreditation requirements. So through the FDP, you will be able to see how those modifications happened over time. We also will share information about how we have validated our methods before we use them in casework. Another goal is to reduce the use of staff resources in gathering documents related to routine discovery requests. As we go through this training together, you will see that tracking down all the documents you need can be quite cumbersome. So instead of using staff resources to do this work, we hope to use staff resources to answer your other questions and requests in a more timely manner regarding the documents that you need that are not on the FDP. The FDP uses a web-based platform called Policy Tech. The company that runs Policy Tech is called Navex Global. Our forensic staff members access these documents on an internal facing Policy Tech site. So in other words, the internal facing Policy Tech site and the external facing, the public facing FDP are mirrors of one another. The same documents are on both platforms as far as controlled documents go. The ones on the FDP have some additional markings that identify them as being from the FDP. So what can be found on the FDP? Well, we have controlled documents as the Forensic Services Division. The controlled document framework is something that is required by our accreditation provider. And when something is a controlled document, it has to go through a standardized procedure for adoption, revision, and assignment. So controlled documents for us will include the Quality Assurance Manual and our Operations Manuals. These are division-wide manuals that govern the work for all scientists in all types of analysis, as well as for many non-scientific topics. We also include in our control documents all of our scientific discipline procedures manuals and training manuals. And because scientific discipline manuals are revised approximately once per year, we sometimes need to modify those manuals between revisions. So for example, perhaps a new chemical is going to be used and we want to add that to the manual for procedures, but it's not time to revise the entire manual yet. What we will do is to issue a memo that modifies the manual because it is between revisions. Memos carry the same weight for our staff. They must be followed, just like the procedures manual must be followed. Control documents also include work instructions. Work instructions also carry the same weight as a procedure. These are standalone procedures, sometimes for instrument work or confined directives to one given small area. Work instructions may govern an entire division, just a discipline, or even just a lab. Control documents also include guidance documents. These provide supplementary guidance to staff. They are not procedures, but instead describe best practices. There may be exceptions to following them in case-specific scenarios. Control documents also will include method validation summaries, and in general, these date back to 2013 when the Forensic Services Division validation process was formalized. We have put additional older validations on the FDP for both DNA and toxicology. And as of last month, June 2024, we have over 2,100 documents on the FDP. New documents will be uploaded each month to stay current. As a public user, you may view, download, save, or print any of the documents you find on the FDP. They are downloaded in a PDF format. And additionally, they will contain certain markings that identify them as coming from the FDP. You'll see these throughout this training. For other documents, follow your organization's normal discovery request procedures. That would include casework notes for the scientist who is doing the analysis, a CV from the scientist involved in your case, instrument maintenance logs, and other non-controlled document type requests. So let's talk more about what can be found on the FDP. All available division and discipline manuals on the FDP go back at least as far as 2018. So we're talking about at least 5 or 6 years ago. For those areas of our lab that are most likely to incur discovery requests related to older lab work, our documents will go back to approximately 2000. This is as far as we have documents in electronic form. The areas of the lab that are affected by these older discovery requests are usually operations, quality assurance, field investigations, which used to be called crime scenes, latent print processing and latent print comparison, and DNA, serology, and biology processing. A chart of all the contents that can be found on the FDP is also found on the FDP, titled Chart of FDP Content by Lab Discipline/Unit. This chart displays the available years for each type of document, as well as the folders they live within the FDP organizational scheme. You can find this chart under the help or user help, the user help department on the FDP, and I'll show you where that is. How do you get to the FDP? It's very simple. All you need to access the FDP is this link. There is no login required. So you might want to bookmark this link so that the website is easily accessible for you. Once you get to the FDP home screen, you will see that one of the folders available is those user help documents. And they include not only a copy of these slides, but also that chart I just mentioned about all the contents of the FDP by discipline, as well as an FAQ about the FDP. We recommend, if you're new to the FDP, that you start by reviewing the FAQ and also doing the self-guided FDP training module, which includes an answer key so that you can check your understanding of how the FDP works. Please also note, we do have a limited number of public licenses. So if you click the link, you might get an error message if all the licenses are in use. If that's the case, please wait 45 minutes and try again. If someone logs onto the FDP and then they stop using it because they're finished, the system takes 45 minutes to log them out automatically. So that's why we say, please wait 45 minutes and try again. We are monitoring the frequency of login errors so that we can decide if we need to purchase more licenses. Right now, about 6 months into use, we are averaging about 1 error message per day. So it shouldn't be too much of a problem for you. How will the FDP be used by you, a member of the public? This training is targeted at members of the legal community, law enforcement community, and criminal justice community. When you need documents from the FDP, it will most likely be utilized for discovery requests for an upcoming trial. To find the documents related to a particular lab request, you will use the FDP to locate the documents that were in effect for the staff member on the date their lab report was issued. Now, of course, for any given trial, there may be multiple lab reports, so you would want to do this process for each of the lab reports in question. In the example, you can see that the date of issue is in the header of this lab report. Each page will have a date in the header. If analysis was conducted over an extended period of time, it might be necessary to consult the examiner's case notes to determine the entire analytical window. The start date is recorded on page 1 of the scientist's case note packet, and the report date closes the analytical window. I'll talk more about this at the end of this training. All right, so you've clicked on the link, and this is what the screen will look like. You see the company name here, Policitech, in the upper left. And then the main window is divided into 3 columns. The leftmost column, the dark colored column, has 2 options, search and browse. The default view is browse, but the browse view also includes a search bar. I would recommend always staying on browse because it fulfills both search and browse needs. The middle column is a list of how we have organized the departments within the Forensic Document Portal. You can see that the site you're in is Forensic Document Portal right here, and all these documents are published. The staff member who is using the mirror site, they would see something different here. And so they can tell the difference when they're on the public site versus the internal site. As you look down the list of departments, you'll see that user instructions and help folder that I mentioned before. It contains 7 documents, so you see the number 7 here. We have an operations department, quality assurance, biology processing, chemistry, DNA, field investigations or crime scenes, firearms, latent prints and impressions, toxicology, trace evidence, and then the last department is documents that pertain just to a single laboratory. Each of these departments has subfolders or subdepartments, which you can access by clicking on the plus sign. Once you hit the plus sign, it will turn into a negative sign, and the subfolders will appear below. So by clicking on the plus next to biology processing, it reveals biology processing guidance documents, a folder for procedures, manuals, memos, and work instruction, a folder for training, and a folder for validation. Again, if you hit the minus or negative sign again, it will close and condense these as well. Whatever subfolder you have selected, in this case, I have highlighted by clicking on biology processing training, the right-hand column will then display a list of the documents that are contained within that folder. As you can see, there's a numeral 8 here, indicating that there are 8 documents within the biology processing training folder. And I see those 8 documents here. Let's talk about how those documents are named and displayed. Every document title will begin with a date. Those dates will then sort automatically the documents chronologically. The date is the date the document went into effect for the Forensic Science Services staff. So this first document is Biology Processing Training Manual that went into effect on July 6, 2015. Then we have the name of the manual, and then in this case, the word archived followed by another date. When the document is archived, that is taken out of service, usually replaced by a new version of the same topic, the archive date indicates when that happens. So this manual was in place and being followed by staff members from July of 2015 to March 1st of 2022. So you can see most of these documents end in archived. The last two do not. They have a date where it was in effect, 2024, but it is not yet archived, meaning these are the current manuals in use. Notice all of these documents are PDFs. So let's use biology processing to go through a further example. I said a moment ago that under biology processing, you had subfolders which contain different types of controlled documents: guidance documents, procedures manuals, memos, and work instruction, training manuals, and any memos that pertain to them, and then validations. Notice that you see a plus sign by some of these folders as well, and you can click the positive or plus sign to expand them. In these cases, these are separate folders for much older groups of documents. For example, if you click on the biology processing training plus, what pops out is an older folder for documents related to biology processing training before 2015. So if you have a discovery request pertaining to a case that is significantly older, you will need to go further down in the tree of the subfolders. If we look at the 8 documents in this training folder, we know that each begins with the date that the document went into effect, and that the end of each title shows when the document was archived by Forensic Services. So let's practice trying to figure out which of these documents were in effect on January 1st, 2018. So looking at the dates, I look at this very first one. Was it in effect before 2018? Yes, it was. And was it still in effect after 2018? Yes, it was. So this document went into effect in 2015, was in effect until 2022. Therefore, that's the manual that was in effect for biology training on January 1st, 2018. Going further, and keeping that date in mind, January 1st, 2018, this memo is also going to be relevant to my discovery request because it was published at the end of 2017, November 13th, and not archived until almost 2 years later, 2019. So that is also in effect on January 1st, 2018. The next one, however, is not in effect on the date that I care about, because it wasn't published until 2019, and I'm looking for documents that were in effect in 2018. So just these 2 first documents, this manual and this memo that modifies that manual, were in effect on this first date. That means that a scientist would be following this manual, except for this change, which was triggered by this memo. When the memo goes into effect, an edit should be placed in the manual itself to point readers to the memo. So you should see them working in tandem. Let's use the second date as a second example. What about January 1st, 2024? By that time, the first manual on the list had been archived. This memo doesn't apply. It's already archived. This memo doesn't apply. It's already archived. Now we come down to the 4th document on the list, a processing training manual, in effect 2022, and it wasn't archived until February 2024. Therefore, that was the version of the training manual that was in effect for our staff on January 1st, 2024. That date falls within the window encompassed by these 2 dates. Are any of these memos also relevant? Were they archived after 2024, January 1st? Yes, for both of them. These 2 published memos were published before this date of interest, January 1, 2024, and not archived until after. So that date falls again within the live window for both these memos. So for that date, you would have these 2 memos and the manual as needed for discovery. And then we have later in 2024, the biology processing training manual was revised again. And we have a second memo that revises that one. Both of those are currently in effect with no archive date at the end of the titles. So biology processing is a fairly straightforward department in our lab system, but some are much more complicated. For example, trace evidence and toxicology and DNA all have multiple sub-disciplines within their parent discipline. So for example, in toxicology, the toxicology discipline includes antemortem, or what used to be called urine toxicology, as well as blood volatiles, which is usually blood alcohol, but not always, breath alcohol, which is the ICP unit, implied consent unit, and postmortem toxicology. So all of those, antemortem, blood volatiles, breath alcohol, and postmortem are subdisciplines within toxicology, and they will have separate manuals for each. And then, of course, we have toxicology guidance documents and toxicology work instructions. Toxicology also has a dedicated technician to help as a support staff, and they will have their own documents here to guide their work. So if we want to look to see which antemortem tox procedures manual was in effect on March 1st, first we need to click on the plus by toxicology to open up the subdisciplines, and then find the folder for antemortem tox procedures manuals and memos. We're looking for the urine toxicology procedure from March 1st, 2019, 2019. And remember, antemortem and urine is just old name and new name. So looking on the list that I have displayed here, I'm looking for a date in 2019. So I'm looking for a manual that was published before 2019 and archived after 2019. And the one circled here in green is the one I want. Published end of December 2018, archived end of January 2020. And then we'll look for, were there any manuals that modified that memo? Were there any memos that modified that manual that were in effect on this date of March 1st? And the two in blue, the answer is yes. They were both published in February, the month before the date of interest, and archived not until 2020. So they are still in effect. So the documents I need for discovery, if I have an antemortem tox request report dated March 1st, 2019, is this green circled manual and the two blue circled memos. The two memos circled in red also modify that same manual, but they were published after the report went out. And so the staff member would not have been looking at these memos because they did not exist yet. Those are memos of the future. So you don't need to worry about them for your discovery request related to this date. Note, if you look at the archive date for the manual and all four of these memos, it's January 31st, 2020. What happened on that date? The next manual for this urine toxicology discipline was published. So 2020, January 31st, a new manual was published that would replace the old manual and incorporate any information that was necessary from all these memos. So they go away because they're no longer needed, because whatever is still needed is now in the new manual. That new manual is then modified as needed by its own set of memos, which are then archived on the date the next manual becomes published. So it's just like a link from one document to the next, where the published date becomes the archive date, which then is the published date of the next version, and so forth. Once we had the procedures manuals that we needed and the memos for this tox request, I would also want to look in the training folder, which would be here, as well as the guidance documents for toxicology and the work instructions for toxicology. Note, the procedures that the staff member are following are in the procedures manual, any relevant memos, and the work instructions. Guidance documents are interpretation or helpful supplementary information. They are not procedures. In addition, training doesn't usually come into play on their procedures as they're doing a case, but may be relevant background information. Often for discovery requests, we are only needing to look at procedures, memos, and work instructions, but you can always look and use the training and guidance documents if they are of interest to you. I also want to point out that you see on this display some information in the lower right-hand corner. And this tells me that I'm seeing all of the 21 items in this folder, see the 21 right here, on one page. But sometimes a department will have so many documents that it will need multiple pages. So don't forget to navigate between them in order to not miss any content. There's another way you can get information about what was in effect or what modified a document on a given timeline. So looking again at a toxicology example, we're looking at an old urine toxicology procedures manual published in 2022. And at the end of each manual is a history table, which lives as an appendix. And it will show the memos and when they were incorporated or when they were published and then incorporated later into a revision of a manual. So we have our table from the FDP. This is the list we would see in the FDP online. And then this is the pages, page and a half of the history table in the document itself, this manual itself. And you can see that here's the manual here when it was published on 12/17/2018. That's this date here. And then we've got 3 memos listed in the history table. However, we have an omission here because this one memo is not listed in the history table. It's an omission by accident. We didn't start requiring memos to be listed in the history tables with any consistency until around 2019. So before that and throughout the year 2019, you may find gaps. So it's not a bad idea to look both places, both the history table and the list on the FDP. Make sure that you've got everything you need. The FDP is considered more accurate because we have been able to make it more complete. We can't go back in and edit documents from the past in the way that we would like to do those corrections. They are kind of locked in their as is state. I also want to bring to your attention some of those marks on our documents that you access on the FDP and how you can recognize them. So at the footer of each page, we have a line that prints out the name of the file, which is the same as the document title, which starts with the date that it was published and then the name of the manual. When the document becomes archived, this will be updated. So we will add the word archived and the archive date to this stamp at the bottom of each page. Also, upon archiving, each page will get a watermark that says archived. That helps everyone know that this is not a current manual, but was in effect in a previous period of time. The third marking, in addition to the footer stamp and the watermark, is the header stamp, which simply says on every page, accessed via OSP Forensic Document Portal. That helps us know if you have a printed copy where you found the document, if it comes up in court or in any communication with lab staff. So you can go through the departments and scroll up and down and look through all your documents there, but there are some shortcuts that can make searching for what you're looking for a less cumbersome task. And one of them is a search function using the title search. So when you're in the home page, I pointed out that you have a search field. So you notice you'll have public viewer, forensic document portal, published documents, and then you just have a search bar here. Anything you type in the search bar and then hit the magnifying glass tool, which is the search tool icon, It will search all the titles on the FDP and give them all to you as a search result. So for example, if I type in the word contamination, I get all the documents that contain the word contamination in their title. You can see some of them are archived and some of them are currently live. In addition, the search results come from a variety of disciplines and they are a variety of document types. We have memos, we have guidance documents, we have work instructions, and they come from DNA, quality assurance, and field investigations. And this is crime scenes, our old code for crime scenes, which is now field investigation, FI. In addition, some of the documents are limited even further. So guidance documents is GD, a guidance document DNA would apply just to the DNA staff. If we see work instruction WI, PDX, CS, that code tells us it's a work instruction for only the chemists, or excuse me, only the staff members in Portland lab who perform crime scene work. So it narrows it down with each code. This work instruction down here is a work instruction for field investigations. There's no lab code. That means it applies to all division staff who perform field investigation work. For memos, the quality assurance memos are issued at a division-wide level. They apply to all division staff, all scientists, all support staff, everybody. Let's use this list to follow one particular document through its lifetime. If we choose this first document here at the top with this green star, we have a 2017 memo called DNA FAQ, Contamination Detection, Communication, and Reporting. It was archived January 31st, 2020. Looking at that date down here, we see its second version went live on that day. It was archived 2021, April 26th, which is the date the third version went into effect. This third version is not archived, therefore it's still the live one. So you can see it's just a chain of dates linking these documents one to the next. Notice also that when you do a title search, you're going to get variations on the word. So we've got contamination in these titles, but we also have decontamination in these titles. So be aware. Depending on the word or words you use here, you'll get a short or longer list of documents. You can also use the search function to search for a specific manual with a given title. It's an easy way to look at the timeline of that manual over the years. Here I'm using in the search field, Quality Assurance Manual. It will search the entire phrase together and pull up all the documents with that title. I'm not showing all of them to you, but here's a shorter version of them. So we've got all the quality assurance manuals starting from 2017. Notice that it was archived when a new one was published, archived when a new one was published, and so forth. It's an easy way to tell when a document was in effect and when it went obsolete. This is a good way to search for manuals on the division level if you know you have multiple requests. So that is multiple lab reports with different dates. You're going to need multiple quality assurance manuals if those dates were separate in time and may have fallen under multiple quality assurance manual lifetimes. So here's at a glance, one screen, you can figure out which of these versions that you need. One caveat, however, is that some titles may change over time as document contents are merged, split, or changed. We already talked about how urine toxicology of the old days is now antemortem toxicology. So that would be one example. Quality assurance manual used to be combined with the operations manual into one larger single manual. They were split, I believe, in 2013. So before that time, the title would be separate and it may not show up on a search like this. Now let's use a different type of search function that gives us a little more flexibility. I'm in a folder showing here that has a lot of documents. So I'm in the DNA guidance documents and FAQs folder that lives underneath the DNA department. It has 97 items in it. You can see 97 here, 97 here. But the display only shows 50 on a page and your view is even less than that. So to be able to see all 97 documents, you will need to use the scroll bar up and down to get you to see all of page 1, and then click over to page 2 to see the second page, and then you can navigate back and forth. Remember, we've got over 2,100 documents on the FDP, so make sure you get used to looking down here at the lower right for information about whether you're seeing all you need to see or whether there is more on subsequent pages. In this folder, as we know, the documents are organized by date, that date being the publication date of the document. If we want to look at one specific document, let's choose this one with the green arrow, 2020, July 6th, DNA guidance document about the hair extraction workflow. We can look for previous or subsequent versions of that same topic guidance document by scrolling through this list of 97 items. Or we can search using the search tool in 2 different ways. Let's show you one version and then the second version of how to search. The first is simple. Just put the word hair in the topic for your search bar because we're looking for versions of this document, which was hair extraction workflow. And it will pull up all the search results in the whole FTP. Remember, the whole FTP, 2,100 plus documents that have the word hair in the title. So we've got 20 items returned here, and we've got the one we were caring about here with this green arrow. And then there's a second version of it here that was published the day the first version was archived. But we've also got those intermingled with a bunch of other documents that happen to have hair in the title. Some of them are related to DNA and hair. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Hair extraction trainee. But a lot of them are related not to DNA at all, but to trace evidence that also deals with hair analysis. So this is a way of searching, but it isn't the most effective way if you really want to narrow your search to a specific goal. Instead, what we can do is to use a feature on this 3-dot tool menu. So by clicking that, you will get to this window here. Leave hair in your title for the find search bar, and then select this box to check it. This box tells the search tool to limit the find or limit the search to the selected item in the arrangement. What is your selected item in the arrangement? That is the folder that you have selected at the time. So that was our DNA guidance document and FAQ facts, which had 97 documents in it. If then I hit the search window, I can see I only get 2 documents returned from that same hair search. And they're the 2 that I care about. The one version of the hair extraction workflow guidance document and the next version of that same document. So it really narrows it down. One really important thing to remember is that you have to go and unclick this box if you want to start searching all of FTP in future searches. So it will be sticky and it will narrow your search every time unless you manually go in and remove it. Could you have done this search a different way? Sure. You could have typed hair extraction workflow in this search field, and that would give you the same targeted results. But remember, sometimes titles of documents change. And so if you're general or vague here, you probably have a lower chance of missing a document. Please also remember that you sometimes have documents in older document folders in the organizational scheme. And so to go back further in time, you may need to go out of one folder and into another folder. Here's another search function that you may find useful, a negative search. You've probably done this on Google or other search engines. In the search bar, you can type the negative sign and then your term. So here I've typed negative archived. This search will locate all the documents on the FDP that do not have, so are missing, the word archived in their titles. These documents, therefore, are still in effect for forensic staff, regardless of when they were originally published. Note, validations are never considered archived, so this search will include all the validations on the FDP. So you can see when I did this search, I've got 296 items here on 6 pages. So you'd have to toggle back and forth to view them all and use your scroll bar. And the oldest document that we have published that is still in effect on the FTP, when I made this training slide, I think it's actually different now, was from 2015. And then if you scroll down and went to other pages, you would see newer and newer documents until you got to documents that were just published last month that are currently in effect. You can combine a negative search with a positive search to refine it even more. So I could do negative archived, positive ops. That would pull up all the live documents with ops in their title. Ops is our three-digit code, 3-letter code for operations. And those codes are used anytime we title a work instruction, a memo, or a guidance document. So here we have ops work instructions. Here's an ops guidance document, work instruction guidance document, work instruction guidance document. No memos in this list right now, but those would show up here as well if we had any live ops memos. Please be aware, though, that we do not use these codes, these shortcuts, for manuals. So the operations manual is called operations manual, not ops manual. So it wouldn't show up here. You would need to search for negative archived plus operations. You can also use that negative archive search within a given department using that checkbox for the arrangement limited search if you wanted to search for even a smaller subset of the documents on the FTP. That can be really effective if you know exactly what you're looking for. Again, I'll remind you to go in and manually uncheck that search toolbox so that you return to full searching. What else do you need to know to find relevant documents for discovery? So let's talk first about validations. So validations are how we show that a method is deemed satisfied to do casework with it. So this is related to our accreditation requirements. We need to show that a method works and that we sufficiently understand its strengths and weaknesses, any thresholds for sensitivity, that sort of thing. We validate methods before we put them to work on casework, and those validation summaries are stored on the FTP. To determine which validations may apply to a given lab request, you might need to consult a subject matter expert in the lab, since not all the methods will apply to a given analysis. For example, in DNA, they have methods that relate to just Y-screen testing, or they have methods related to paternity requests, or they have methods related to using body swab extractions. So all those validations will be stored in the DNA validations folder, but not all those techniques would be used in a given case. So talk with the scientist or another staff member to figure out which validations might relate if you're interested in looking at them for discovery purposes. Next, remember that these controlled documents that are available on the FTP include manuals, those memos that modify the manuals, work instructions, and guidance documents. You need to look at all the folders to find the relevant documents to know what was that staff member doing on this particular case at this particular time. Those will hold the directives. Again, just to emphasize, guidance documents are considered best practice, but they are not required procedures. And then I mentioned before that you may need to look at the entire analytical window if analysis was conducted over an extended period of time, such as months or even years in the situation where a cold case is worked. It may be necessary to look at their notes to look at the whole analytical window by looking at the start date on page 1 of the note packet and the close date on the report. So check the FDP for documents that apply to the entire window. Getting the case notes is not done through the FDP. For the case notes, you would need to do your normal discovery request procedures. So let's look at one more example. If you had a glass case where glass samples were analyzed in a death investigation and the lab report was December 1st, 2021, which control documents would be relevant to analysis? So first, we would need to locate the glass department in the list of departments on the FDP, and then use that report date to find the documents that are in effect within all the various folders. And then if desired, we would look for relevant validations as well. So on the FDP, you can see I'm in Public Viewer, my 3 columns. Default is Browse. I go down the FDP or Forensic Document Portal list of departments, and glass falls within trace evidence. So I click the plus by trace evidence and it would open up the subdisciplines. Remember, trace is one of our complicated ones. It has the largest number of subdisciplines. And I see among them is glass. So I click the plus on glass. And then I see glass procedures, manuals, and memos, of which there are 5 documents, and glass training, of which there are 5 documents. Opening up the procedures, manuals, and memos. Remember, I'm looking for documents relevant to the date of 12/01/2021. And I see that the glass manual here in this circle is the relevant procedures manual because it was published midway through these 2 dates, the published date and the archive date. I further see that on November 1st, a memo related to glass and its manual was published. So I need to also collect that memo. It was in effect until sometime in 2022, which is after the date of my report. So whoever analyzed this glass was following both the procedures manual and this memo at that time. I would do the same thing for the glass training memo or training folder to find the manual in effect at that time and any relevant memos. And then I would look in the guidance documents and the work instructions. Notice that these are not separated out to glass. These would apply to all trace disciplines because some of them cross over various subdisciplines in content. So looking at those, here I'm in the trace guidance documents folder with my 6 documents. Using the date of 2021, December 12th, I see these 2 in blue are in effect. The first one is titled Guidance Document TRC, which is the code for trace, Rejection of Data and Trace Analysis. That's a guidance document that applies to all of trace. So yes, I need that one. Then the second one is comparisons of glass and FRIT via XRF. So that applies to glass. So yes, I definitely need one. This next document was also in effect. It was published in August of 2021, and it wasn't archived until 2023, but it has to do with paint, and it's not relevant to a glass report. The next one was published after my report date of interest, and the next one after, and the next one after. So I just have 2 guidance documents to care about. Now, sometimes you can do what I just did and look at the dates and the titles and figure out what applies to you. Other times, the titles may not assist you in determining whether a document is relevant to your report. You might have to open it and take a look by reading the guidance document and deciding if it is relevant or not. And if you're still not sure, reach out to lab staff. Let's do the same thing with the work instructions over here. Looking at the dates, we have a series of 8 documents that are in effect on this date, December 1st, 2021. All the other ones are either published before that date, but archived before that date, or published after that date. However, I've got 2 groups. The ones with a solid purple circle are ones relevant to GLASS. The ones in a dotted purple circle are the ones not relevant to GLASS. How do I know that? Again, sometimes the title is a good clue. For example, this one says work instruction trace B, hair fiber TP, which is trace processing. It doesn't mention GLASS, so that's not applicable. This is hair examination, not applicable to GLASS. The other ones you probably wouldn't know because it's giving you names of some instruments, and a lab staff member could assist you in deciding whether that instrument is used in GLASS or not. So after we've got our manuals and our work instructions for TRACE, there's an extra wrinkle for TRACE. With TRACE disciplines, all the TRACE subdisciplines also follow the procedures and training for something we call TRACE General. So we were in GLASS here, but all these subdisciplines for TRACE also fall under the requirements for TRACE General. So we need to look for TRACE General procedures and TRACE General training. In addition, for some TRACE disciplines, particularly fibers and hair, the trace processing documents will also apply. So if in doubt, ask a lab staff member, we can give you some guidance, and then you'll be off to the races. If I look in Trace General Procedures, my selected folder, 6 documents, I've shown them here. And here's the manual that's in effect on our date, remember, 12/01/2021. And there's no memos. And then we would do the same thing for Trace General Training, and there would be one manual for that. And I just know there's no memos. So for this one GLASS lab report example, we have one Trace GLASS procedures manual with one modifying memo, one Trace General procedures, no memos for that one, 2 guidance documents, 4 work instructions, and then a training manual each for GLASS and General. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 documents for this one report. And you might have a field investigation report as well, or a latent processing and comparison set of reports. So you can see that it does add up quickly of how many documents pertain to any given trial that you might be working on. A little bit of a timeline and where we are now with the FDP. When I'm making this training video, it is the end of July 2024, and we have fully implemented the FDP for over 6 months. We started January 1st of 2024. So since that date, the documents that are available on the FDP are no longer being provided by the FSD staff under a discovery or public records request. So you are able to get them just through that FTP screen, and you don't need to go through us anymore. However, for all the documents that are not on the FTP, and I mentioned some of them before, case notes, instrument maintenance logs, analyst CVs, go ahead and follow your organization's normal protocols for requests for those materials. And we should be able to get to them faster now that we're not doing all the other stuff as well. Each forensic laboratory has at least one staff member that is designated as a document request coordinator, a DRC. They can be your primary contact for assistance. If you're not sure who that is at your local laboratory, give them a call. Remember, we have 5 laboratories in the state, in Bend, Pendleton, Central Point, Springfield, and Portland. But certain types of analytical work is done only in certain labs. So if you have a DNA report that's coming from Portland lab, same for trace. Toxicology is only in Portland and Springfield. So make sure you look at the report to figure out which lab it's coming from and contact the document request coordinator at that specific lab for that help. If you have questions related only to the use of the FDP, there's also this email box that you can contact, fdp.admin@osp.oregon.gov. We should be able to answer your questions in 2 to 3 business days. Do not send discovery requests to this address as they will not be honored. Contact your document request coordinator. We hope that your use of the FDP will make it simpler for you to obtain the discovery materials that you need, as well as speeding our ability to provide you with the materials you still need from us. If you have any further questions about the FDP or its use, go ahead and use that email that I linked at the last slide, or go through the FDP help documents available on the FDP platform. I would start with the FDP FAQ document. These slides are also available there, and the self-training module is there as well. Thank you very much for your interest in this topic.